Hey everybody, hope you're all doing very well. Today's January the 29th, and we're going to be going over what Bitcoin is about to do. And this is possibly a very scary situation, but we're going to dissect it, break it down, and then do a back testing to see what's happened in the past few years before and see if we can actually make sense of what could possibly happen this time as well. So thank you for joining me, everyone. My name is Philakone, and my job is to provide you with top quality technical analysis from the perspective of a day trader that's been doing this for over 8 years now. And I hope that with my 8 years of experience in the crypto space, I can provide you with the best tips and advice that can guide you through this market and especially add some new things to your day trading skills already. 8 years ago, when I first started day trading and getting into crypto, there wasn't the resources that were available now. And it was such a new space that finding information was really difficult. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to learn, and especially in what order. And it was one of the most difficult processes that I've had to go through in trading. And looking back now, if I had to go back in time and tell myself a lot of things and teach myself what I know now, it would be a much easier experience. And that's exactly why I made the Ultimate Bull Market Strategy Guide. It's currently 40% off. It tells you every single phase of the trading, from how to pick a coin to what to do during a trade and how to enter them and how to exit the trade with precision as well, when you look for identifying factors that can tell you, hey, the trend is actually changing right now. These phases in trading are extremely important to know, and it can only maximize your potential for profit and reduce your overall risk if you know a system that could help you. And right now, there's a 40% off sale that goes until the end of January, so it's a really good idea to pick up this Ultimate Bull Market Strategy Guide. Normally, it's $17.49 for the lifetime Discord membership and the course itself, and then with the 40% sale off, it comes out to $10.49. Although if you want to take the course by itself, it's normally $8.99, but it's on sale 40% off right now to only $5.49. So definitely consider picking it up. You've got a lot of time to study for this bull market. And the last person that you want to be is somebody that is in the bull market and still studying. When the bull market comes, you're going to have to make lots of decisions, and it's impossible to do so while still learning how to play the game. So it's good to get a head start. Focus on buckling down right now, hit the books, start studying, develop those strategies. And if you do all of this before the bull market comes, you're just going to increase your chances of success. So let's get right into this and let's talk about what Bitcoin is most likely to do very, very soon. And what Bitcoin is about to do is something called the death cross. That's where the 50 and the 200 moving average ends up crossing over, and it can cause catastrophe when it happens. Although the good news is that Bitcoin has never done anything like this ever in the history of Bitcoin before, but there's a possibility of it happening. And when it does happen, it could be absolutely devastating for crypto. Although I'm very optimistic about it, and I think that the bulls are eventually going to recover. So let's take a look at a lot of different scenarios. Let's backtest this death cross scenario and also look at potential golden crossover strategies as well that might be coming into effect very soon. So let's get right into it, and I'll show you exactly my thoughts. If you like my content and you want to support my work, I would appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button, the like button, and also the notification bell. So thanks very much, and let's get started right away. And welcome to everybody that might be new to my channel. So let's talk about moving averages. A moving average is a set of data that takes the average price and makes it into a line. So there are two that I mainly use: the 55 exponential moving average and the 200 moving average. So the 50 EMA, it'll end up taking the past 50 bars. It'll take the average price of all of them, which gives you a smooth line. And then there's also the 200 that I use as well. And the 200 is going to be blue. This one here takes the average of the past 200 bars, and it gives you the average price in this line. This right here is called a golden crossover. And what a golden crossover is when it's a bearish market, and then the 200 exponential moving average was originally resisting all of it. So all the price points are below the blue line. And then all of a sudden, it starts to turn into a bullish market. And then the blue line ends up supporting all of it below. So then the price starts to trend above it, which indicates a very, very bullish momentum that is going to occur. And unfortunately, there's also the opposite. And the opposite would be a death cross. A death cross comes after we've had a very, very bullish market like we've had in 2021. The blue line, the moving average of the 200, it was originally supporting all of the prices. And then when this happens, it's called the death cross, and that can turn into a very bearish scenario. And one of the major things I have to mention about these EMAs is that it's a lagging indicator. And a lagging indicator requires the past data and the history of what has happened before, and then it takes the average of everything, and then it formulates it into a price that we see into that line. So for example, if we're using a 50 exponential moving average, it takes the very last 50 bars that have happened. But the ones in the back, for example, the bars between 40 and the 50, between all the way back there in the end, they end up lagging because the data is so far behind that it needs to catch up to the front. So what ends up happening with all of this is that it's not a real-time gauge of what's going on right now. It's a lagging indicator, and oftentimes enough, when we see these types of crossovers, the golden crossover and the death cross occurring, it can often be too late because what it looks like is going to happen with these crossovers, it already happened a few bars back. And we're going to get into some of the difficulties with this, and I'll backtest a bunch of different charts for you from the history of Bitcoin in the previous bear markets and bull markets before. So let's take a look at what happened traditionally on the 2-week. And I need to remind you firmly of this, that the MACD crossovers are incredibly significant because on the 2-week chart, it's actually only happened 3 times ever in the history of Bitcoin before. And every time it happened, there were some major events that have unfolded. So will these events be very similar to what has happened before? So if we take a look at where it happened before, where I just made this vertical line, and it would be down over here. Zooming in on it, what you're going to see is that Bitcoin rallied the first time we crossed over. We ended up rallying about 31%, but we ended up dropping a total of 48% lower than where we originally began the crossover. So the crossover occurred there, and then we ended up getting about 48% lower by the time that the year was over. So the next time that this ended up happening was in April of 2019. We get this MACD crossover on the 2-weekly chart, and then this is what ends up occurring. We get a gigantic rally from the bottom to the top here of about 344%. The bulls must be extremely happy about that. Unfortunately, we ended up dropping a substantial amount of about 72% shortly after that. And one thing I've got to take a note of is the Fibonacci retracement of that particular wave, where we ended up getting to exactly the golden ratio right here of 618. And then as we wicked it, we ended up dropping to the downside. And one of the funny things as well is this. When it dropped to the downside, it made a gigantic drop total. So it took a total drop of 73%. But before it did that, look what ended up happening right here. It ended up dropping as well right to the golden ratio. And then after it did that, it ended up rallying, first of all, 67%. So it made a 344% gain. Then it dropped 53%. And then it made a gigantic rally here of about 60%. And then after that, it ended up dropping another 62%. So the commonality in the 2-week chart when it crossed over before 2 times in the history of Bitcoin in 2015 and also in 2019, the 2 major factors that were the same is that they did a major rally first of all, and then it dropped a substantial amount. In 2015, we rallied 30%, and then we actually fell below the point of the MACD crossover to about 50% lower. But in 2019, we ended up rallying 350% first of all, but by the time the year ended, we ended up dropping about 70%. But the best thing about 2019 is that it stayed above the price of the actual MACD crossover. So it's crossed over right now as well, and it leaves us to wonder what's going to happen to the price of Bitcoin as this crossover happens. Are we going to get a major rally first of all, and then take a major drop below the current low of about $15,000, and then we're going to start a bull rally? Or are we just going to rally tremendously and then get a drop, but it's going to stay above the price of the current low right now? So those are the 2 options that we have based off of what we've seen happen before with this MACD. Now, another option that we would all love is that we actually don't retrace at all and we just keep going to the upside. And that brings me to my but. But a major event is happening right now, and that leads me to the 55 exponential moving average and the 200 that may be crossing over very soon. In all of the history of Bitcoin, what we've seen is that there has never been a potential death cross where this crosses over and the blue ends up on top. If we go all the way back to the history of Bitcoin when we first had it in 2012, we can see that it's never been below the yellow line one time ever. In fact, it's always been supporting the yellow line, and it's also always been supporting the price generally. Sure, there's few times that we've broken below it, right here perhaps, and right here perhaps, but every time we got there, we ended up bouncing tremendously. So here we can see that the price point, it breaks down below with a lot of force. And because we've held traditionally before right around it, and it's also acted as a temporary support, there's no doubt in my mind that this death cross potential is going to be a major factor that's going to decide what happens to Bitcoin in the future this year. So we take a look here as well. There's a huge resistance, and it can't be coincidental that's coinciding with the potential death cross that could occur in the next few weeks to perhaps a month or two. So we see that this horizontal support line, it's going to act as a major resistance. And we also see that this potential death cross could be occurring very soon as well. So using these price points as a pivotal moment, we can see that something could possibly happen to Bitcoin as we trend higher to these points over here. And if you had to ask me what's going to happen here, my answer would be I really don't know. But what I do know is that when more data comes in, as we get closer to these price points and more data comes in that I'm able to dissect, and then I'll be able to react to the situation and make the best informed decision then. I've always believed that the best traders, they tend to react more than they'd like to predict. If you can react, it means that as the data comes in, you can make your decisions then. Because right now we might be missing too much data to make an educated guess. So when the data comes in, as it gets closer to this potential resistance, right around $25,100, we're going to have a much better gauge and more detail as we zoom in to what's been going on. And it's very clear we can all anticipate what could happen here. There's most likely one of three scenarios that would happen. One, we get there and then we end up stalling and go sideways for a while until the market figures out what it wants to do. And the second thing that could happen is that Bitcoin just shatters through it and the bulls have entirely taken over now. 25,000 is not even a resistance, and then now we're heading to around the $28,000 regions, which is the next logical resistance after that. And the third thing that can happen is that the bulls completely get destroyed and the bears overtake them, and then we get a massive drive to the downside, and then capitulation begins, driving the market down to further prices this year and perhaps creating another low. If it doesn't create another low, then perhaps we're going to end up getting a low like we did in 2019, where we rallied really hard and then we took a major dip to the downside. But we don't break below this low, and then all of a sudden to the next year, the bull market continues and we go from there. So these are very exciting times for Bitcoin right now. I believe that the market is a tremendous place to make a gigantic amount of money in a short period of time. But the thing about that is you got to have the confidence, you got to have the skills to back it up. You got to make sure that you're studying. You got to know what's going on in this market. Otherwise, you're just going to get eaten and destroyed by a shark like me. So let me just give you an example of this week of what's been going on with myself. So I made a total profit of $78,000. My total loss was only $3,800. My net profit in the past 2 weeks is $74,500. And I'm sure if you've been following me on Twitter, you've been just seeing me hammer out all of these trades. And I'm very consistent. People are always like, Philakone, why don't you show your losses? And I tell them, well, I do show my losses. There's just not a lot of losses to show you. I'm always consistent with my profits. And one of the main reasons why I am is because I selectively choose my trades. I don't go after every single trade. I only go after the ones that are very highly likely to succeed. Just because I see a coin that could be moving to one direction, I don't jump in for every single coin that I see that's moving or has the potential to move. I go for the coins where I firmly believe that I'm going to win 100%. And by being very patient and letting the trades come to you, this is how you can maximize your profit. Not only that, I went through a list here. You're welcome to go to Twitter and take a look at some of my losses here, but the losses are so tiny. They're literally like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, but the wins are gigantic. They range from like $9,000 to $20,000. And it also has a lot to do with stopping yourself out. If you don't have the ability to stop yourself out and minimize how much you're losing, you're just going to end up taking on these gigantic losses that you can't control. And eventually it's going to be the end of your career as a trader and your balance will go to zero. The most important skill to have as a day trader is to manage your risk. A lot of amateur traders will go into the market thinking, hey, I need to follow signals. Hey, I need to work on my strategy. Which ones are going to work? But then it just ends up getting flawed and they end up getting humbled very quickly in the market, because what ends up happening is that they lose everything. And when they lose everything over a few years, you're going to start to realize that, hey, It's only about managing my money that matters. Learning how to minimize your losses, minimize those mistakes, make sure you have different layers of risk management that can protect you from losing all of your capital. And that's when you're going to get to the road of becoming a successful trader. I'm sure you've all been there before where you make a gigantic amount of profit over like 8, 9, 10 different trades and you're very happy about it. But then all of a sudden, what happens is you get liquidated through one single trade because you didn't stop yourself out, or you take on these massive losses from one single trade and it just wiped out all of your profits. If you don't want to be in that situation, you've got to study. And that's exactly what the Ultimate Bull Market Strategy Guide of mine will teach you as well. It's going to teach you about the different layers of risk management, how to manage your trades when you're in them, because during the trades is when mistakes can go wrong. You got to know exactly what to do during these trades and how to make the best decisions, because when your emotions get compromised, it leads to making mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you end up exiting out of your position too early, or you end up writing your losses way too greater than you should have. And then that leads to catastrophe. So my whole course, it teaches you all of this from the beginning to the end with 26 hours of goodness. So if I had to leave you with one parting note right now, it would be to really watch out for this $25,200 resistance that's coming up probably in the next few weeks to maybe a month or two. So be careful of it. So let's get more data. As the time gets closer to this price point, we can take that data, we can dissect it, and we can make better educated predictions to see what could possibly happen in the future. So stay safe, everybody. I hope you're all having a great time in the crypto market. It's been a very, very volatile past 3 weeks, and I'm up a tremendous amount. So consider taking my course that can only add value to your life. And it's 40% off right now, so you get a chance to pick up a great course for a phenomenal price. I hope that you've all been extremely happy with this current bull market. It's been a very, very profitable experience for myself and many people that I know. And I hope that it provided you with lots of insights and you learned especially from them as well. So the hustling, it never stops. If you want to be successful in this next bull market, you have to study. You have to prepare for it. You can't just sit back on the sofa, watch TV, eat food all day, and do nothing, and then just be like, hey, when the bull market comes, that's when I'll jump into it. It doesn't work like that. You've got to be prepared. You have to stay in the mindset of a champion, of somebody who's going to keep up the hustle. If I had to ask you who'd win, who would win? Myself, that's studying literally 16 hours a day, back testing, preparing, working, getting ready for this bull market that's going to come, or somebody that's just sitting there doing nothing, or they're just waiting for the bull market to come and says, hey, I'll finally start trading when the bull market comes. No, probably not that guy. I think that I'll have a higher chance of being successful than anybody that's not going to do any work. So make sure you guys put in the time if you want to get that dime. So have yourselves a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining me. If you love my content, please make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and also the bell there to get notifications for when I'm online. Have yourselves a great day. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see a lot of you as my students. Bye now.